I hadn't planned on making a big entrance. I was just holding a small bag hand cream and a card Dorian's daughter had once said she liked the smell of. Something gentle. Something that said, "I remember." The hostess glanced at my name and gestured toward the back. I spotted them right away, Dorian at the head of a long table, laughing loud enough to draw attention. Rachel beside him, clinking a glass of white wine with her father. 12 seats, maybe more. All full. I took a step closer, smiling softly, hoping at least one face would light up. They didn't. Dorian looked over, recognized me instantly and smirked. "Mom?" he said, not standing. "This table's for family. Find a spot outside." A few heads turned. Some laughed outright. Others smirked like it was some harmless inside joke. Rachel didn't even look up. I paused for a moment. I felt every eye on me. My fingers tightened slightly around the ribbon on the gift bag, but I didn't say a word. Just nodded, turned, and walked back toward the front, where a small two-top sat near the kitchen door. It smelled like garlic and burnt butter. Not expensive, not elegant, but no one was watching me here. The server came by, confused. "Ma'am, are you part of the party in the back?" I shook my head. "No, just here for a coffee." He nodded and left. I set the gift bag beside me. No one from the table had followed. No one had called me back. The laughter carried over. Silverware clinked. Dorian's voice rose above the rest, joking about something someone's father-in-law did. I picked up the menu, though I wasn't hungry. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't racing. That surprised me. They hadn't changed. But maybe I had. The server returned. I ordered the coffee. Black. I watched them toast their silhouettes blurred by the flicker of candlelight and pretense. And I knew what tonight was about. It wasn't about me. It never had been. Not even when the bill came. No one turned around. Not once during appetizers. Not when the waiter brought my coffee, not when he asked quietly if I'd like anything else. I shook my head. "This is fine." He looked uncertain, but didn't press. At the big table, Dorian was in rare form. Glass-raised voice booming. To family, he called, grinning like a politician. Rachel linked arms with her sister, both of them laughing like they'd grown up in some fairy tale together. Someone snapped a photo. I watched the waiter bring another round of wine. Bottles, not glasses. One of the in-laws ordered seafood towers, plural. I saw the waiter write down Wagyu lobster and the special red. Their table applauded. Rachel cheered. No one looked my way. I took a slow sip of the coffee. Burnt, a little bitter, but warm. Steady. Someone else joined their group, late a cousin from Rachel's side, I guessed. They all made room, squeezed closer, moved chairs. No one said, "There's space at the next table." Not one word for me. I let them have their dinner. I listened as Rachel bragged about their new patio furniture, about the designer she hired to redo their guest bath. I heard Dorian correct someone about the square footage of their house. He added 600 feet that didn't exist. They all nodded, impressed. Dorian smiled wider. It was loud. The kind of laughter people force when they're trying to be seen. That's all. This was a performance, a meal for show. And I was the planted audience in the wings. I stirred my coffee with a wooden stick. I didn't need to be invited. I wasn't waiting for a seat anymore. I already knew why I was there. Not for connection, not for celebration, just for the card swipe that would come later. The unspoken line they never said aloud, but always expected Mom will take care of it. And when dessert arrived, when that final toast was made, I saw Dorian glance toward me for the first time all night. Just a flicker, because the waiter was bringing the check. The plates were cleared with casual flourish, as if the waitstaff had choreographed it. Empty wine glasses, butter-slicked dishes, shells stacked high in metal towers gone in a sweep. All that remained was the lull of indulgence and the assumption that someone else would handle the rest. I knew it before the waiter even approached. I saw the black leather folder in his hand. The way he moved toward me. Not Dorian, not the center of the table, but toward the edge. Toward the one who hadn't touched a single course. He placed it gently beside my coffee. I didn't touch it. Dorian leaned back in his chair like a man proud of a job well done. "You've got this right," he said. All charm, all grin. "It's nothing for you." Rachel didn't even glance at me. She just giggled. "It's not like it's a big deal." I waited a breath longer. Then, two. I opened the folder. $2,927. Of course it was. I didn't flinch. Didn't sigh. I reached for my phone not to check my balance, not to calculate. Just to give my hand something to do. I could feel the weight of their eyes now watching for the familiar routine. Mom reaches for her wallet. Mom saves the night. Mom stays silent. Instead, I stood. I took the bill. Walked 3 quiet steps toward their table. Every fork dropped, every back straightened. Dorian looked up, waiting for the gesture he believed belonged to him. I smiled once. Small. Then I placed the folder in front of him. "I think this one's yours." Rachel blinked. Dorian's grin faltered, not fully falling, just softening into confusion. I gave them nothing else. No lecture, no scene, just the check. Then I turned back toward my table. The waiter stood frozen beside them. His eyes flicked from Dorian to the folder and back again. Dorian hadn't touched it. Not yet. I stayed by my little table long enough to hear the first ripple of panic. Chairs scraped, murmurs rose, silverware clinked against plates no one was eating from anymore. The waiter's voice carried just enough for me to catch each word. "Sorry," card declined. Dorian stiffened. "Run it again," he said, the edge of command creeping into his tone. Another pause. Still declined, the waiter replied, softly. I could picture it without turning, Rachel leaning toward her father, whispering. The rustle of handbags, the shuffle of pockets. Someone asked for another card. Someone else hissed a question under their breath. The performance had ended and the lights were on. I rose slowly, sliding my arms into my coat. The gift bag still sat where I'd placed it, unopened. I picked it up, tucked it under my arm, and walked toward the door. Dorian's voice reached me sharp now. "Mom, wait." I stopped, but I didn't turn. "It's your dinner," I said, my voice level. I was never really part of it anyway. There was a silence behind me, thick as syrup. I could feel it tugging at the back of my coat, trying to draw me in again. For once, I didn't step into it. I kept walking, heels tapping against the polished floor, past the other tables, past the hostess stand, into the cooler air by the entryway. My heart was steady. My hands didn't shake. I had imagined this moment for years, but never thought it would come quietly. Through the glass, I saw their silhouettes still clustered at the table. Rachel's head bent, Dorian's hand frozen over the bill. The waiter standing like a referee who'd blown the whistle. I pushed the door open and stepped outside. The night air hit my face like a cleansing tide. Behind me, the muffled voices rose again, frantic, arguing over who had a card that would work. I didn't look back. I headed toward the parking lot, my steps slow and deliberate, knowing exactly what would happen next. The cold hadn't fully settled when I heard the door swing open behind me. "Mom, don't do this," Dorian called out, his voice sharp but uneven. I stopped. Not because he asked me to, but because I wanted to. I turned halfway, just enough to see him jogging toward me in his polished shoes jacket, half-buttoned urgency written all over him. Rachel followed a few paces behind, arms crossed tight over her chest. I didn't say anything until he got close. Close enough to smell the wine on his breath. Close enough that I could see he wasn't sorry, just cornered. "I didn't do this," I said, meeting his eyes. "You did." He blinked like he didn't understand what I meant. But he did. He always had. He just didn't think I'd ever say it out loud. Rachel stepped in, then her voice soft, almost rehearsed. "We can't afford this," she said, glancing back at the restaurant. "Not right now." I tilted my head. "Then you shouldn't have ordered it." She flinched. Dorian looked like he wanted to argue, but no words came. Just a weak shrug, a glance at the pavement. "You expected me to do what I always do," I said. "Smile. Pay. Pretend it doesn't hurt." Rachel stepped forward. "It's not like that. It's exactly like that." They stood there side by side, suddenly very small in the crisp night air. Dorian, the man I raised to be decent, now a stranger who left me out of a dinner he wanted me to fund. Rachel, who never once said thank you for the holidays I hosted or the gifts I gave their children. They both looked stunned, like the script had gone off page. I adjusted my coat. "I'm not your backup plan." "Not anymore." Dorian opened his mouth again. I didn't wait to hear what came next. I turned back toward my car keys already in hand, my pace steady. Behind me, their voices overlapped, calling after me soft, now almost desperate. I unlocked the door, slid into the driver's seat. The house welcomed me the way it always did, silent, still mine. No lights on, just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the familiar creak of the floor by the front door. I didn't flip the switch. I liked the dark tonight. It felt honest. I set my bag on the entry table, hung my coat, and toed off my shoes. My phone buzzed as I walked to the kitchen, once, twice, then again, in quick succession. I glanced at the screen. 5 missed calls from Dorian, 2 from Rachel. A string of messages. They threatened to call the police. "Please come back. They're saying it's fraud if someone doesn't pay." "Mom, please." I set the phone face down on the counter. Then I turned it off. The coffee from earlier still lingered on my tongue, bitter and bold. I brewed another cup this time with intention, not for comfort, but clarity. Window open, mug in hand, I stood in the quiet. The street outside was empty. Porch lights blinked on across driveways. Somewhere a dog barked once and stopped. No one was demanding anything from me. No voices pulling, no hands reaching. Just air cool against my cheek and the steam curling from my mug. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. There were no tears. Only space where guilt used to live. For the first time, I wasn't holding the weight of everyone else's comfort. I wasn't carrying the responsibility for their bad planning, their smug laughter, their empty thanks. I wasn't fixing what they broke. I was still. I took a slow sip of coffee and let the warmth settle. Dorian could figure it out. Rachel could call whoever she wanted. Let them explain to the restaurant why no one had a card that worked. Let them answer questions, make phone calls, ask for favors. I wouldn't be picking up. Tonight, I had nothing to give. Not my time, not my money, not my forgiveness. I closed the window, halfway sat down at the table, and let the silence stretch long and full. And then, just once, I smiled. The next morning, the light was soft and gray, a quiet sort of morning. I sat with my coffee in hand when my phone buzzed just once. A message from Clara, a friend of mine who worked at the steakhouse part-time. "Your son got chewed out by the manager. They tried splitting the bill 4 ways. I blinked, then kept reading. 1 card was declined." Dorian argued. The staff wasn't impressed. I let the screen dim. Didn't reply. Instead, I smiled, just faintly. Not cruelly. Just with the kind of tired satisfaction that comes from watching a storm pass that you didn't have to step into. They hadn't expected the bill to land in their hands. They certainly didn't expect it to stick. Dorian, who always carried himself like a man who never had to say no, now trying to explain why he suddenly didn't have the means. Rachel, who had once told me to let the next generation lead, now fumbling for a solution she couldn't swipe away. I finished my coffee, set the mug in the sink, and tied back my hair. The air outside was crisp and smelled faintly of damp soil. I slipped into my gloves, stepped onto the porch, and made my way to the garden. My roses needed pruning. The herbs had started to spread too far. I crouched down, letting the clippers snip clean and quiet through the stems. I didn't think of Dorian then, not in anger, not in sorrow, just as a fact. He'd made his choices. And now so had I. I trimmed back the overgrowth, gave the roots room to breathe. The garden didn't care about who laughed at dinner or who left who at the table. It only responded to what was nurtured, what was tended, and what wasn't. As I brushed soil from my knees and moved to the next patch, I heard the faint buzz of my phone inside the house again. But I didn't stop what I was doing. Not this time. The next text came around noon. "We'll pay you back. Please. Help us this one time." I stared at the words on the screen. There was no name attached. It didn't need one. I knew Dorian's rhythm. I knew Rachel's desperation. I knew how they softened their words when they wanted something. I didn't respond. I didn't save the message. I just pressed delete. Then I set the phone down, walked outside, and picked up the watering can. My flowers were thriving pink and yellow blossoms along the fence, the kind that had taken years to finally bloom the way I'd hoped. They needed care, yes, but not the kind that drained me. Not the kind that left me empty afterward. Just water, just presence. That's all. I moved from pot to pot in silence. For years I had explained myself. I had over-justified every boundary. I just wanted to help. It's no trouble. I know things are tight for you. Each sentence had chipped away at something, at my own worth, at my own place in this family I gave so much to. But I had no speech to give now. No reason to defend a decision I didn't owe anyone. I wasn't being petty. I was being finished. The truth was simple. I'd spent enough of my life being the cushion for everyone else's fall, being the person they only called when something needed fixing, funding, smoothing over. And still, they had the audacity to treat me like a burden. A woman to be seated near the kitchen while they toasted themselves. No more. I turned off the hose. Watched the water soak into the soil. No shouting. No lecture. No dramatic exit. Just silence. Because I had nothing left to explain. I picked a bloom from the vine, tucked it into the small vase on my patio table, and sat down. The world kept turning. The sky was soft with September light. And for the first time in a long time, my name didn't belong to anyone else's expectation. It didn't take long for word to spread. My friend Clara called me 2 days later. Voice hushed, but tinged with something that sounded like quiet justice. Dorian had to take out a loan, she said. The restaurant blacklisted them after all the arguing. Nobody else stepped up. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. They thought someone would, she added. They always thought someone would, but no one did. Not this time. And I didn't rush in to fix it. I didn't offer to make the calls or cover the balance or explain away their behavior. I didn't write a check or offer an apology that wasn't mine to make. I simply lived my day, made coffee, folded laundry, replanted my marigolds. Nothing collapsed. The sun still rose. The world didn't fall apart. They weren't ruined, just embarrassed. Uncomfortable. And for once, responsible. I used to believe that if I didn't soften the blow, someone might break. That my silence would shatter the people I loved. But I was wrong. It wasn't their hearts I was protecting all those years. It was their illusions. The illusion that I would always be there. That no matter how they spoke to me or where they seated me, I would stay and absorb it all. But people learn quickly when the net is gone. I could imagine them now spinning stories to others. It was a misunderstanding. She overreacted. She's sensitive. That's fine. Let them. I didn't need to defend the truth. It stood well enough on its own. What they called drama, I called boundary. What they saw as betrayal, I saw as survival. I spent the evening on my porch, trimming a loose thread from a cushion, listening to the wind stir the trees. I thought of all the years I rushed in, all the ways I'd carried weight that was never mine, and I felt nothing. Not regret, not anger, just space, room where guilt used to live. And in that quiet, I realized something else. They hadn't fallen. They'd simply landed in the life they'd built without me holding it up. I turned 68 on a Thursday. No cake, no decorations, just a breeze coming in off the sea and a quiet sense of contentment I hadn't known in years. I set the porch table myself, 4 simple plates, a pitcher of cider, slices of apple bread still warm from the oven. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I just wanted ease. Real laughter. No eggshells. Miriam from book club brought flowers. Jordan, the retired carpenter who fixed my fence last spring, brought a folding chair and a crooked smile. And Liza, my neighbor, brought a jar of fig jam and said, "You always make space for everyone. Thought it was your turn." We sat under the awning while the sky softened. Talked about books, growing tomatoes, the best pie crusts, and old music. No one interrupted. No one made me feel small. No one asked me to pay. We clinked glasses of cider as the sun dipped low, golden over the water, and for the first time in a long time, I felt surrounded by people who saw me. Not what I could give, just me. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down at the screen. Dorian. "We're in town. Can we stop by?" No happy birthday? No apology. Just an assumption that access to me was still free. I stared at the message for a long second. The porch was full of voices and warmth and clinking glasses. I looked out toward the sea where the horizon met the sky in a pale silver line. "No," I said aloud. "Not today." Then I blocked the number. I didn't feel cruel. I felt clear. This was my life now. A smaller table, but every seat earned. We refilled our drinks. Jordan told a joke about falling off a ladder. Liza howled. Miriam wiped her eyes from laughing, and I just sat there smiling. Finally, not waiting for anyone else to arrive.